Improve your video and focus your user's attention with customizable visuals. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to add and customize annotations to point out important details, shapes and blurs to hide sensitive information, sketch motion callouts to draw on your video, and lower thirds to add additional information. Let's get started. Navigate to Annotations in the Tool panel. Here you'll find callouts, arrows and lines, shapes, blur and highlights, sketch motions, and keystroke callouts. Click and drag a callout to the canvas. Then fine-tune its rotation, scale, and position. To modify text, double-click the annotation. To adjust the style of the callout, change its settings in the Properties panel. To hide sensitive information, switch to the Blur and Highlight tab and drag a blur annotation to the canvas. Fine-tune its position and size to cover the desired section. Then, adjust the intensity of the blur in the Properties panel. To completely hide sensitive information, use Shapes. Switch to the Shapes tab and choose an option from below, or select from the drop-down. Then, drag the shape to the canvas and adjust its position and size. To draw on your video, switch to the Sketch Motion tab. Drag one of the options to the canvas, then preview it. To adjust the amount of time it takes to draw the callout, change the Draw Time in the Properties panel. While we're here, let's change the color to match our callout, then preview it. Finally, let's add a quick intro or lower third. Navigate to the library and choose Lower Thirds. Double-click on an option to preview it. When you find one you like, drag it to the timeline or canvas. To customize the lower third, make changes in the Properties panel. Or select a theme from this menu to quickly customize the colors, fonts, and style of the asset. Check out our other tutorials to learn how to use, create, and share themes. Thanks for watching.
When Canvas space is at a premium, show more of what's important by using crop mode to hide unwanted parts of a video or image. For example, if you recorded too much of your screen, you can use crop mode to remove the extra. To enable crop mode, click this button. A thin blue border appears around the selected media. Click and drag the handles to crop the video or image. And when you're finished, click the arrow button to return to the normal edit mode. Here are a few other examples of when using crop mode might come in handy. Isolating a part of a user interface, fitting a clip within a specific space or frame, or even showing simultaneous actions happening in separate areas of your screen. For more tips and tricks, check out the tutorials on our webpage. Thanks for watching. Camtasia device frames are great for establishing context and adding a level of professionalism to your videos. To add a device frame to a piece of media, open the Visual Effects tab and drag the device frame effect to a clip on the timeline. The default frame is a desktop monitor with a looping background video to give it a more real-life look. To choose a different device frame, select an option from the drop-down or download additional device frames. It's important to understand that all of the device frames fit a 16:9 aspect ratio, which means they perfectly fill standard video dimensions, like 1080p and 720p. If you record a uniquely shaped section of your screen, the device frame may not immediately fill a standard video canvas. This is particularly common when recording a mobile device or full-screen footage from a MacBook. If that happens, simply drag the edges of the frame until they snap to the border of the canvas. If you want to remove a device frame, click the X in the Properties panel, or delete it from the effects tray. Now that you know the basics, here are a few tips to help you get started. If you add an animation to a clip with a device frame, the clip and the device frame animate together. This is great for setting up the beginning of a video. Use the device frame to establish context, then once the action begins, zoom in to show details. If you'd rather jump directly from a device frame to full screen video, place the playhead where you'd like to make the jump, then split the clip, and remove the frame. This creates a natural jump from the device frame to the full screen recording. Well, that's all for now. If you're looking to learn more about Camtasia, check out our tutorials on our webpage. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. In this tutorial, I'll focus on the basics of editing audio in Camtasia. In Camtasia, audio is edited on the timeline the same way you edit video clips. Click and drag to position clips, select mistakes with the playhead, then cut them out, split clips, then click and drag to create space on the timeline, trim, untrim, and even add effects. Displayed across each audio track is a waveform. This is a visual representation of the recorded audio that makes it easy to see changes in volume. For example, in this project, I have audio recorded from my microphone on the top track. By looking at the waveforms, I can see I start speaking here, while this part of my narration is almost silent. To get a better look at the waveform, expand the track up. To adjust the volume of a clip, select it, then drag the audio line up or down. It's important to note each clip on the timeline has its own audio line, which is adjusted separately. To adjust the volume for only part of a clip, use audio points. To add audio points, double-click the audio line, then click and drag to change the volume. Camtasia adjusts the volume from one point to the next. Let's walk through an example. On the bottom track of this project is an audio clip I want to use as background music. I'd like the music to be loud at the beginning of the video and soft during the narration. To do this, zoom in on the timeline to see more detail, then add an audio point a second or two before the narration begins, and another a second or two into the narration. Then click and drag to adjust the volume. Let's see how that sounds.
Hi everyone, this is a quick tutorial on how to use Google Drive to upload a file and share it with a colleague.
Nice! Another way to adjust the audio of a clip is to use the built-in audio effects. For example, drag the fade-out effect to the music clip on the timeline. This adds audio points to the end of the clip that fade out the music. As you work with audio, sometimes it's best to focus on one track at a time. Click this icon to temporarily disable or re-enable a track. In this project, we've looked at the voice narration and music. But it's important to note there's a third audio track. Combined together with the screen video is a recording of the system audio. These are the sounds that come from your computer, such as alerts, music, and more. To edit the system audio, I recommend you right-click the clip and select Separate Audio and Video. This makes the system audio its own clip on the timeline. Lastly, as you add audio to a project, Camtasia automatically adjusts the loudness to an industry standard level. This means all audio clips in a project start at the same loudness before editing. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to check out our other tutorials, and thanks for watching. If you need more time to explain a particular screen or moment in your recording, you can extend a frame. Extend frame essentially duplicates a frame of your recording, which you can drag to make longer or shorter so you have more time to say what you need to say. To extend a frame, select a clip, place the playhead at the frame you want to extend, then right-click and select Extend Frame. The default duration is 1 second, but if you need to adjust it, you can click these arrows, or my favorite, drag it on the timeline. To extend a frame on a Mac, hold the Option key and drag from the end of the clip. As you can see, a copy of the frame is added to the end of the clip. For more tips and tricks, check out the tutorials on our webpage. Thanks for watching.
Camtasia 2020 has introduced a new tool called Templates that allows me to make a quality video very quickly. In fact, here's an example of a video that I made using the default template that took about 1 minute. I simply added my screen recording, changed some text and colors using quick properties, and hit share. That's it. Let's take a look at how I did it. In the Camtasia editor, I went to File, New Project from Template, and selected the Camtasia 2020 default template. The project opens with some items already added to my media bin and timeline. First, I add my screen recording, which I had saved in my library. Then, I drag that recording down to the timeline and hover over the placeholder. When the outline turns green, I let go of my mouse button and choose Ripple Replace. Well, that was easy. Now, I customize the intro to my video that was part of this template. Click on the intro to open its quick properties in the Properties panel. From here, I make changes to the title text, the color of the shape, and even add a logo. Of course, if I have any themes installed, I can use those to make this even faster. Then, I repeat the process for my outro. If I like the way this project looks, and I want to reuse it in future videos, I choose Save Project as Template. Now, most of my work is automatically done for me the next time I need to begin a new video. That's all for this video. If you want to learn more about how to use and create templates, we've got plenty to help you learn at techsmith.com/tutorials. Hi, I'm Jason. Today I'd like to walk you through making your very first screen recording video within Camtasia. Let's start with the capture window. When looking at the Camtasia recorder, it's best to ask yourself 3 simple questions. What do you want people to be able to see? Can they see you? And can they hear you? First, let's start with what do you want people to be able to see? From the left side of the recorder, you can select the area you'd like to record, whether it be full screen or something smaller than that. The options are available to you here underneath this drop-down menu, where you can choose different full screen and widescreen options. Today we're going to just record full screen for this example. Camtasia can also record your webcam while you're recording. If you'd like to toggle on your webcam, simply click this button here, and Camtasia will look for the cameras that you have plugged into your screen. Hovering your mouse over will give you a little bit of a preview to see what the camera looks like. For today's example, we're not going to worry about the webcam, so we'll toggle it off here. And thirdly, do you want people to be able to hear you? Arguably, it's a very important part of your videos, so making sure your microphone is turned on by having this green check mark is crucial. You can also see if your voice is being picked up by looking at the audio meter here to see if you are getting input levels. Now, we always recommend if you have a USB microphone available to you, to use that because it'll give you a higher quality audio result. However, whatever microphone you have available to you is the best one that you can use right now. Now, before you hit the red record button, I recommend getting what you want to record up on your screen. For us, we're going to record a simple web interface. This is a mock website that we're going to use for our recording. Now, we're going to record full screen as we mentioned before, So you should see a dotted green line around the outside of your screen. That's going to show you the recording area for Camtasia. When you're ready, click the red record button to begin your process. If it's a process that you're familiar with, you may be okay with just hitting the red record button and talking through your process. If you're like me, it may be helpful to have a small list of notes, even on Post-it notes, to give you guidance as to what you're going to talk about. Let's give our sample recording a try right now. When I hit the red record button, Camtasia is going to give me a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then everything I say and everything I do after the fact will be captured by Camtasia. When I'm ready to stop recording, I can simply hit the F10 key to stop recording and bring it into the editor. Let's start our recording. Hello, let's walk through adding a person to our process tracking board. At the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button, and we're going to add a contributor by clicking the plus button here. We'll add in the name and their email, and then we'll select their role, which for today will be follower. When we're ready, click the add button. The new member will show up here at the bottom. We just need to enable them by clicking on this button here. And then when we hit close, our new contributor will be at the top of the screen as a member of the board. I hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching. Once we hit the F10 key, we will see that our recording has been brought here into the Camtasia editor. The Camtasia editor is broken up into 4 major parts: the media bin library tool area over on the left, your canvas here in the middle, the properties panel on the right, and your timeline here at the bottom. Let's look at each part individually. The media bin is where you're going to keep content that's going to be used for this particular recording. For our case, we only have one piece of media in here, which is the screen recording we just captured. The library is where you're going to keep content that you may want to use across multiple projects. This is also a place where Camtasia has preloaded royalty-free assets for you to use in your recordings, such as icons, animated introductions and lower thirds, motion backgrounds, music, and more. The motion backgrounds are great for adding a pop of polish to your video, while the outros, lower thirds, and intros can all be customized using the properties drawer. You also have the ability to favorite tools here, such as tools within the annotation area, transitions, behaviors, animations, and more. The canvas is where you're going to see a preview of your video as you create it. It's going to show you the media that you have in your media bin that's been added to the timeline, and acts as kind of a preview window as you play through your video. In fact, right below the canvas is a play button that you can click on to watch back your video as it was being recorded and as you make edits to it. Over on the right-hand side, you see the Properties panel, where the options change dynamically depending on the type of media you have selected. For example, if I click off this area and click on the recording that we just did, I see that I have a couple of tabs here across the top of things that I can change about my media. Everything from the size to some editing of the audio and the ability to change and resize the cursor. The Properties panel will change dynamically based on the tool that you have selected. And we'll see that a little bit later when we add some annotations to our video. Last but certainly not least, here at the bottom, we have your timeline. The timeline is exactly that. It has the playhead, and it's where the media is going to be located for you to create your video. The playhead starts here at the left and goes along your entire recording as the video was being captured and as your edits are made. The video will end when the playhead gets to the end of the media and there's nothing left on the timeline to utilize. We will actually use the timeline and the canvas to do some of our edits today. First thing first, let's save our project. If you notice at the top of the screen, right above the canvas, it says TechSmith Camtasia Untitled Project. Well, we want to save our project so that we can come back into it and edit it later, or so that we can hand it off to someone else in case more than one person's going to be working on this video. To save the project, we simply go to File, Save, and give it a name. Once we've saved it, Camtasia lets us know that this particular file, this TSC proj file, or TechSmith project file, can only be opened by Camtasia. And the new name of our project is located up here at the top of our screen. Next, let's take a quick look at our timeline. You'll notice that there are two tracks here on our timeline. Track 1 is our screen recording. This was what was captured on our screen earlier. And we have our audio track, which is all of my spoken word that I use to describe the action of which was happening on the screen. What I like to do first and foremost is what I call wholesale cuts. These are cuts to my video, perhaps removal of errors, possible load screen times, just anything that's going to help tighten up our video. If we look underneath the canvas over here to the right, we will see that our video is currently 48 seconds long. Well, once we're done with a few cuts, we'll be able to see that that time has lowered. So, first, I'm going to take my playhead and notice that here on my timeline, there is an area at the beginning of the video where there's no audio that's been recorded. And I can tell that because there's no audio wave files being drawn. It's just kind of quiet. And that was us playing our video and seeing what was ready to go. Let's play back our video and see how it starts out. Hello, let's walk through adding a person to our process tracking board. Okay, so what that has shown us is that that area at the beginning is blank, meaning there was no speaking done and there's no action that's happening on the screen. So we can probably cut a good section of that out. Here's the easiest way to do it. If you notice on our playhead down here on the timeline, there's a green tab and a red tab. That's actually the selection tool within Camtasia, and it lets us make really precise cuts and edits. To use the selection tool, you simply click on one of the tabs, either the red or the green. In this case, I'm going to click on the green to drag it to the left, and I'm going to make a selection of my video. And the area that I'm selecting is where I didn't do any speaking whatsoever. When I've made that selection, I'm going to simply hit the scissors button, which provides a cut action. And when I cut it, it removes that part of the video completely. And if we look over here to our timeline, right above it, we'll see that the time has changed from 48 seconds down to 45, meaning we've cut 3 seconds of video off of our video, which was not needed. So to complete those wholesale cuts, I can go through with my playhead and find sections of the video where I can cut sections out. For example, here's a section at the end, which can easily be removed because there's no speaking going on and no action on the screen. Once I make those wholesale cuts, I start making edits to take my video to a more polished state. Something as simple as adding intro and outro transitions can be a powerful way to polish your video up. Here within Camtasia, we have a series of transitions built in, and they're easy to add. First, we'll click on the transitions button, and we'll select the transition that best suits our video. For me, I'm going to use the fade transition. To add it to my video, I simply click on it, and drag it down to the media, and you'll notice as I drag down there's a yellow space on the left side and the right side of my media. That shows where this particular transition would be applied. If I drag it to the left, it'll turn green and create a fade in. If I drag it to the right, it'll create a green area that's going to fade out, but I want it to fade in and out. So in order to have that happen, I simply drag the transition down to the middle of the media, let go, and now both a fade in and a fade out action has occurred. And I can check that by bringing my playhead back to the beginning of the video and hitting play. Hello, let's walk through. Beautiful fade in, and then if we place the playhead at the end, we will see it fade out. And thanks for watching. So just like that, we made a couple of quick edits that add a little bit of polish to your video with very limited effort. The next thing I typically do is utilize Camtasia's cursor effects, specifically our cursor smoothing effect. That takes a jagged movement on the screen by the cursor, or for someone like me who talks with their hands, and smooths out that action with one simple movement. To apply cursor smoothing to this video, I simply click on it, drag it down onto that same screen recording, and now my cursor will have a nice smooth effect to it. Next, let's use some callouts to draw attention to certain parts of our screen. In the video, there's a portion when I click on the plus button in the upper part of the screen, and then bring it down to where we're going to add another plus button to add a managing member of the page. So let's place the playhead where I start talking about clicking on the plus button to add someone in. I believe it's right here. At the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button. Okay, so at the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button. Let's do something really helpful for us, and that is right above the timeline, there is a magnifying glass button. If I click on that button, it's actually going to take the timeline and give all the viewable area available to me for my entire project, meaning I can see the beginning of the project all the way to the end at the right-hand side. That also gives a little bit more detail on the timeline so we can make very, very precision movements by placing things on the timeline without having to guess where things are. So let's go into our tool set, and we're going to go over to annotations, and we're going to add something simple. We're going to add this red arrow to our video. When I click on the arrow and drag it onto the canvas and place it where I'd like to be, I can do a couple things with it right away. First, what I want you to notice is while we've added this to our screen, the properties drawer on the right-hand side has changed, where we can control colors, sizing, text, you name it. The properties panel always changes dynamically based on the type of media that you have selected. So for us, let's make some simple changes. One, I don't think I need any text on this particular callout, so I'm going to double click in that area and just hit delete on my keyboard to remove that text. Next, this arrow is comically oversized for me, so I'm just going to use these adjustment handles and resize it to the point where I think I'm happy with it. And then I'm simply going to position it on the screen where I want it pointing. In this case, we're talking about this plus arrowed area. Now, I'd like you to notice something. At the bottom of the screen here on our timeline, when I dragged the arrow onto the canvas, this callout appeared on the track number 3 in this case. This is where the arrow is going to show up on our video. Now, because it's a piece of media, in this case it's a still image of an arrow, it can be adjusted as well. I can reposition it by dragging it left or right, putting it wherever I need it, as well as lengthening the time it's on the screen or shortening it by dragging on either end of the callout to make changes to its duration. That's going to be really helpful to us because we're actually going to animate this arrow to come in and move around for us. Don't worry, animations are pretty easy to do. First, let's have this arrow fade in on the screen. And we can have it fade in the same way we had our screen recording fade in, by going up to the transitions, choosing fade, and clicking and dragging it down here onto the callout. And remember, dragging it to the middle gives us both a fade in and a fade out action. So now let's play this video back and see how that arrow shows up on our screen. At the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button, and we're going to add a contributor. Okay, so we had it fade in nice and neat. And then we're actually talking about this plus button down here at the bottom of this area. So what I would like to have done is I'd like this same arrow to move from here down to this plus button. Well, I need to extend how long the arrow is on the screen. So I'm going to come down to my timeline and I'm going to simply drag the arrow out a little longer. And to animate that arrow, what we're going to do is we're going to create a custom animation. First, we're going to place the playhead exactly where we want the animation to end, which is right here. I want it pointing at that plus button at the same time that my mouse gets there. To add an animation, we come up to the Animations tool, and we're going to click on the tab at the top for our Windows users called Animations. And there's lots of pre-built animations in here, but I'm going to teach you right now how to use the custom animation. To apply a custom animation, we click and drag it down onto the timeline, and it will actually form this arrow on the piece of media. I'm going to drag the arrow so that the head of the arrow hits the playhead right where I want the animation to stop. So the way animations work in Camtasia is this. When the playhead hits the tail of the arrow, the animation begins, and then as the playhead goes along the body of the arrow, the animation happens, and then it ends right at the head of the arrow. What's neat about animations is you can actually change how fast or slow they happen by clicking on either end of the arrow and dragging that animation out or shortening it up. Now, to get that arrow in a position we want it to be, we simply double click on the head of the arrow so it snaps the playhead right there, right to the end of that animation. We come up to the canvas and we simply click on our arrow here, the callout, and drag it into the position we'd like it to be in. In this case, we were having it move from here down to this plus button. And as we come down to the timeline and drag the playhead back across that animation, you'll actually see the arrow move up on the screen. Because we've created an animation that tells Camtasia at this point we'd like you to start moving the arrow and slide it down to this plus button. So let's play that entire arrow sequence out by moving the playhead ahead of the call out itself and hitting play. At the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button. And we're going to add a contributor by clicking the plus button here. We'll add in the... So what we see now is it did the animation just like we liked. And I'd actually like the arrow to fade out a little bit before this add a new member screen pops up. So I'm going to bring my playhead right to the point where it stops right before it shows up. Yep. And then I'm going to take the media here down on the timeline. I'm going to click and drag the end of it back here so that it lines up with right at the moment where the playhead is. So that when I play this back, the arrow will drop down. And then right before that screen pops up, the arrow will have faded out. And I can move on with the rest of my video. So you can actually do this sort of action with many different types of annotation tools here in Camtasia. Everything from standard callouts, which are shapes with text, to arrows, to basic shapes. You have blur tools across the top as well as highlighting and spotlights. You even have sketch motion callouts that look like they're being drawn on the screen, as well as the ability to capture keystroke callouts. So in case you're showing someone how to do something with keyboard shortcuts, you can do those as well. So you can do a series of other animations and other callouts, but let's pretend for right now that we're done with this video. When you're done with it, you want to share it outside of Camtasia so others can view it. Remember, right now it's in this TSC proj files format, which means the only thing that can open it is Camtasia. So what we're going to do is we're going to save it out to a format that anyone can view. To share your video outside of Camtasia, you're going to click on the Share button in the upper right-hand corner. And when you do that, you have several different options available to you. Saving it as a local file, a couple of cloud destinations like TechSmith screencast.com or Video Review. You've got Vimeo, YouTube, Google Drive, and more. For our example today, we're going to save it as a local file. And since the dimensions of the video are 1280 by 720, we're actually going to use this drop-down menu and produce a 720p MP4. We choose MP4s because those are the most ubiquitous playback formats, which means most devices should be able to watch it without any problem. So we'll click on that, choose Next. We can name the video whatever we'd like. However, Camtasia always takes the name from the current project name as it is, which for us is just my first video. And then we can locate wherever we want to save it. And for us, we're just going to put it on our desktop today. And we hit Save. And when we're ready, we click Finish, and Camtasia begins to render out our project. Now, the time it takes to render depends on your speed of your computer, length of the video, and a few other things. But once it hits 100%, we can go right to our desktop or wherever we saved that video, and we will see my first video. Hello, let's walk through adding a person to our process tracking board. At the top of the screen, we're going to click on the plus button, and we're going to add a contributor by clicking the plus button here. As you can see, we were easily able to watch our video and see some of those wonderful edits that we made. I hope you found this useful. Remember, you can always learn lots more about Camtasia or any other product that TechSmith makes by visiting us at our webpage at techsmith.com/tutorial. Good luck and enjoy making your first videos with Camtasia.
Welcome to the Camtasia tutorials. In this video, I'll walk you through the basics of recording your screen, then editing and sharing your video. Let's get started. Right now, you're in the Camtasia editor. The editor is made up of the timeline, where you can arrange and edit your clips, the Tools panel, where your media is stored, along with shapes, animations, effects, and more, the Canvas, where you position, resize, and preview your media, and the Properties panel, where you fine-tune your media and effects. To start a recording, click the Record button at the top of the Tools panel. This hides the editor and opens the Camtasia recorder. The Camtasia recorder can record your entire screen, webcam, microphone, and system audio. Click to toggle on and off, and select the arrow next to each to customize their settings. If you're on a Mac, the recorder looks a little different. Use the toggle buttons to enable or disable screen recording, webcam, microphone, and the system audio. System audio is the sound that comes from your computer. Click the arrows next to each to customize their settings. When you're ready, click Record, and Camtasia will count down until the recording begins. Hi everyone, this is a quick tutorial on how to use Google Drive to upload a file and copy the link and send it to anyone that needs the file. Thanks for watching. When you're finished recording, click the Camtasia recorder icon, then the Stop button. And if you're not happy with your recording, choose Delete to try again. If you're on a Mac, click the Camtasia icon in the Apple menu bar, then click Stop Recording. The capture automatically appears in the media bin, on the canvas, and on the timeline, where the top track is audio captured from your microphone, and the bottom track is screen video and system audio. To preview the recording, click the play button or press the space bar. To jump to a point in the video, click on the timeline, or click and drag the playhead to scrub through the video. If there's a mistake in the recording, drag a handle on the playhead to select it, and click Cut to remove it. A stitched line appears to show where the media was removed. If you cut too much or too little, click Undo to try again. If you make a selection and want to bring the playhead back together, double-click the playhead. To remove extra footage from a recording, click and drag the end of a clip in. This is called trimming, and if you trim too much, simply drag the clip back to restore your video. To fine-tune your editing, use the zoom slider to zoom in on the timeline. If you zoom too much or want to see your full project, click the magnifying glass to fit your entire project to the timeline. To add additional media, titles, or effects, drag them from the Tools panel to the timeline. And to move media on the timeline, click and drag. If you choose an effect, such as an animation or transition, clips on the timeline highlight, showing you where they can be applied. When working on your project, use the canvas to position and resize your media, and the Properties panel to fine-tune your media and effects. When you're satisfied with your video, export it as a file on your computer, share it to popular web destinations, or upload it to Video Review and invite your colleagues to review the video. And when you're done working, don't forget to save your project. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Let's face it, screen recordings don't always go as planned. The good news is, with Camtasia's editing tools, they don't have to. If you've watched a few of our other tutorials, you may already know how to trim media. What you may not realize is that trimming actually crops the media instead of deleting it. So if you have to backtrack, hover over the edge, drag it back out, and voila, your clip is restored. If you want to trim multiple clips at the same time, select them, hover over the edge of one, and drag. To split a clip into two parts, select the appropriate clip or clips, place the playhead where you want to make the split, and click the Split button. You can also use the S hotkey on Windows or Command-T on Mac to split media on the timeline. Splitting clips allows you to isolate sections of your video or audio for further editing. To split media on all of your tracks and move them at the same time, hold the Shift key and drag the playhead. This is called a ripple split, and it's great for when you need to add some content to the middle of a video, or if you forgot to leave room for an intro. Well, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Camtasia's cursor smoothing effect is a great way to add polish to your screen recordings. The effect takes the movement of the cursor in a screen recording and turns it into a smooth line from one point to the next. Let's get started. First, make sure you have a screen recording on the timeline that contains cursor data. Preview your clip and notice when the cursor does not follow a smooth path from one point to the next. Like this sequence, where the cursor takes a few different turns and detours as the form is filled out. The cursor smoothing effect allows us to make this look smooth and natural, eliminating the distracting movement. To apply cursor smoothing, go to the Cursor Effects tab and drag the cursor smoothing effect to your clip on the timeline. Open the effects drawer on the clip to see the cursor smoothing effect. The effect is applied to the entire clip, but it is best to limit it to times in your video when the cursor is moving. To do this, click and drag from the right or left side to adjust the length of the effect. For even more precision, click and drag to move the effect and change where the effect is applied on the clip. To smooth out the cursor at multiple points in a recording, drag the effect to the same clip. Then, adjust its length and position. Let's see how it looks by previewing the video on the canvas. Notice how the cursor now moves smoothly from one point to the next. The cursor smoothing effect can be customized further in the Properties panel. First, make sure to select the effect to customize, and then edit the settings in the Properties panel. Duration refers to the time it takes the cursor to move from one point to the next. Delay controls the length of time the cursor pauses before and after each click. This helps you ensure clicks and movement happen at the correct moment. Use this checkbox to turn easing on or off. Finally, set whether you want Camtasia to detect cursor pauses. This feature allows you to use the cursor to point things out in a screen recording. If the box is checked, Camtasia detects when the cursor is stationary for 1 second or longer, and uses that as a stopping point on the cursor path. If the box is unchecked, the cursor will only stop at points where the cursor clicks something. That's all for this tutorial. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. In this tutorial, we'll walk through the basics of editing video in Camtasia. In Camtasia, videos are created on the timeline, moving sequentially from left to right. This is where you arrange and edit your screen recordings, audio clips, titles, and more. The timeline is organized into layers, which we call tracks, where media on the top layers cover the ones below. In this example, there's a title on the top track and a screen recording on a track below, which means the title appears on top of the screen recording. If the title is moved to the bottom track, it is now under the screen recording and won't appear in the final video. As you build your project, the canvas is where you preview your work. As the playhead moves along the timeline, everything at that point is displayed on the canvas. So if you change the position or duration of a clip, those changes are reflected on the canvas. The canvas is also a working area where you position, resize, and rotate content. To get a better look at your work, use the Zoom drop-down to zoom in on the canvas, and Pan mode to move the canvas without making changes to your project. It's good to note that everything that's shown on the canvas is produced in the final video. As you work through a project, there are a few basic editing techniques that are good to know. First, to remove a mistake or unwanted section of a recording, drag a handle on the playhead to make a selection, and click Cut. This removes the selection and moves all media to the left to fill the space. If instead you want to replace a mistake with a new recording, make a selection, then press the Delete key. This removes the selected media and leaves space on the timeline for a new recording. Sometimes you need to add media to the timeline, but there's no room. To create space on the timeline, move the playhead, select the clips, and then press the S key on Windows or Command-T on Mac. This splits the clips into two parts, which you can move to create space. To remove extra footage or fine-tune media, click and drag the end of a clip in. This is called trimming, and if you trim too much, simply drag the clip back to restore your video. As you work with the timeline, use copy and paste to speed up your workflow. For example, if you create a callout or arrow you like, copy it, move the playhead, then paste to quickly reuse it throughout the project. And if you make a mistake while editing, use the undo and redo buttons to try again. Lastly, to fine-tune your editing, use the zoom slider to zoom in on the timeline. If you zoom too much or want to see your project in full, click the magnifying glass to fit your entire project to the timeline. Well, that's the basics of video editing in Camtasia. Be sure to check out our other tutorials, and thanks for watching. Welcome back. In this tutorial, we'll focus on two key areas of the Camtasia editor: the canvas and the properties panel. Let's start with the canvas. The canvas is where you design your video. This is where you position, resize, and rotate media. This is also where you adjust the look and feel of callouts and change their text. As you work with the canvas, use the snap lines to help you align content to the canvas or to other media. And to get a better look at your work, use the zoom drop-down to zoom in and see more detail, and pan mode to move the canvas without making changes to your project. When finished, switch back to edit mode, then zoom out to see the canvas in full. As you build your project, keep in mind that everything visible on the canvas is produced in the final video. If parts of a recording or other media pass over the edge of the canvas, Camtasia grays them out to indicate they won't appear in the final video. Sometimes, this is exactly what you're looking for. For example, drag a handle on a screen recording to make it bigger, then position the recording to show only what you want. When you produce your video, all the content outside of the canvas's gray border won't be visible in the final video. When working with the canvas, if you make a recording or add media that doesn't fill the canvas, black bars will appear in the final video. One way to fix this is to increase the size of the screen recording to fill the entire canvas. Then, position the recording to show the most important part. As you build your project, add annotations, callouts, and other media by clicking and dragging directly to the canvas. And to modify text, double-click an annotation and type on your keyboard. To adjust the style or fine-tune media on the canvas, use the Properties panel. This panel displays the properties for the selected media and organizes them into tabs. The first tab is an object's visual properties. This includes an object's scale, opacity, rotation, and position on the canvas. The following tabs change depending on the type of media selected. In this example, an annotation is selected, so the second tab displays the annotation's text properties, where you change the font type, size, color, and more. The third tab displays options for the style of the annotation, such as its fill color and outline properties. If a screen recording is selected, the Visual tab is still displayed, along with two new tabs. The first is the Audio tab, where you control the loudness of a clip, which is also called gain. The second is the Cursor tab, where you control the size and opacity of the cursor. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to check out our other tutorials, and thanks for watching. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to use Camtasia animations to zoom and pan your video. First, let's start with a little explanation. Zooming is when you change the scale of a video to make it appear closer or further away. Panning is when you move the video to focus on something new. Zooming and panning are often used together, where you zoom in to focus the viewer's attention, then pan to something important. Let's start with zooming. First, navigate to a point in the video you want to zoom. Then, select Animations in the Tools panel and switch to the Animations tab. Next, click and drag the Scale Up animation to the clip you want to zoom. This adds an animation to the clip with a default zoom already applied. To preview the animation, click and drag the playhead. Notice as the playhead moves over the animation arrow, the clip zooms in. To change when the zoom occurs, click and drag the animation arrow. And to adjust the length of the animation, click and drag either end of the arrow. Now let's adjust the zoom. Make sure the clip is selected and the playhead is after the animation arrow. Then, drag the scale slider in the Properties panel to adjust the zoom and reposition the screen recording on the canvas to focus on what's important. Let's give it a look. Nice. Now that the clip is zoomed, let's add a pan animation to show something new. To pan a clip, drag the custom animation to where you want to pan. Then, reposition the screen recording on the canvas. The clip smoothly animates from one location to the next. With our pan finished, let's add a final animation to zoom back out and return the clip to its original state. To do this, drag another custom animation to the timeline or press Shift-A. Then, navigate to the Properties panel and click the Reset button next to Position and Scale to return them to their original settings. We now have a project with 3 animations. The first zooms in to focus the viewer's attention. The second pans to something new, and the last one zooms back out to show the recording in full. Before we wrap up, here's one really important tip. As you work with zooms and pans in your project, the position of the playhead is critical to success. To change how a clip looks at the end of a zoom or pan, the playhead must be positioned after the animation arrow. And to change how a clip looks at the beginning of a zoom or pan, the playhead must be positioned before the animation arrow. If the playhead is in the middle of an animation arrow, always move it to one of the ends before you work with a clip. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to check out our other tutorials, and as always, thanks for watching.